Sometimes, to take control of your life, you need to start by stopping. The alarm screamed at 7:43 a.m. Ethan Cole's hand shot out from under the blanket, slapping the phone until the noise stopped. His eyes opened to the same cracked ceiling, the same pile of unwashed clothes on the chair, the same half-eaten instant noodles on the nightstand from 3 days ago. 24 years old. Boston. Call center worker. $31,000 in debt. Zero savings. Zero plan. He rolled out of bed, already late, already defeated. The apartment was a museum of abandoned intentions. A guitar with broken strings he'd promised to fix 6 months ago. A stack of self-help books he'd bought but never opened. A gym membership card gathering dust on the kitchen counter. Every surface told the same story. Someone who kept starting but never finishing. Ethan grabbed whatever shirt smelled least offensive, stuffed a granola bar in his pocket, and ran down 4 flights of stairs because the elevator was broken again. The subway platform was packed with the usual morning zombies, faces buried in phones, eyes empty, bodies moving on autopilot. He squeezed into a crowded car, pressed against strangers, staring at his own reflection in the dark window. When did I become this person? At the call center, the fluorescent lights buzzed like angry wasps. Rows of cubicles stretched endlessly, each one containing someone just as tired, just as stuck. Ethan dropped into his chair, put on his headset, and logged into the system. 8:47 a.m. Already 13 minutes late. Again. The first call came in. "Thank you for calling Tech Help Solutions. My name is Ethan. How may I assist you today?" The voice was his, but it didn't feel like his. It was a recording of a recording, a script repeated so many times it had lost all meaning. The caller yelled about a broken router. Ethan's mind wandered to his credit card bill, then to the argument with his landlord last week, then to the girl from college he'd seen on Instagram living in Barcelona, smiling on a beach, while he sat in a windowless room listening to strangers scream. "Sir, are you even listening?" "Yes, I apologize. Let me—" By lunch, he'd fielded 23 calls. He couldn't remember a single one. He sat in the break room, scrolling mindlessly through his phone, eating a sandwich he couldn't taste, when he noticed something unusual. The new guy at the desk next to his, Marcus Hale, according to the nameplate, was sitting completely still. Not looking at his phone, not eating, not complaining to anyone, just sitting, eyes closed, breathing. Ethan watched him for a moment, confused. In a place where everyone looked like they were drowning, Marcus looked like he was floating. Over the next 3 days, Ethan couldn't stop noticing Marcus. While everyone else arrived frantic, coffee in hand, already stressed about the day ahead, Marcus arrived 15 minutes early. He'd sit at his desk, place his phone face down, and write in a small leather notebook, while everyone else complained during breaks about the customers, the management, the traffic, the weather. Marcus listened quietly, smiled gently, and never joined the negativity. While everyone else looked like they were being crushed by the weight of 8 hours in a cubicle, Marcus seemed centered, present, almost peaceful. It didn't make sense. They were doing the exact same job, taking the same angry calls, earning the same mediocre salary, surrounded by the same depressing walls. But somehow, Marcus was different. On Thursday afternoon, during a rare moment when both their phone lines were quiet, Ethan turned to him. "Can I ask you something?" Marcus looked up from his screen. "Of course." "How do you—" Ethan struggled to find words that didn't sound stupid. "How are you so calm? In this place? Doing this job?" Marcus smiled. Not the fake customer service smile everyone wore like a mask, a real one. 10 minutes, he said simply. Ethan waited for more. There wasn't more. 10 minutes? What? 10 minutes a day. That's all I protect. 10 minutes that are completely mine, where nothing else matters, where I'm not responding to anyone or anything. Just me, present with myself. Ethan frowned. And that works? It's not about working or not working, Marcus said. It's about creating a still point in a spinning world. Everything changes when you have even one small moment of real focus. Ethan wanted to laugh. 10 minutes? That's the secret? That's what separated Marcus's strange peace from his own constant chaos? But something in Marcus's eyes stopped him. There was no sales pitch, no guru nonsense, no promise of miracles, just quiet certainty. 10 minutes seems like nothing. Exactly, Marcus said. That's why it's everything. We think we need massive change, dramatic transformation. But most of us can't even sit still for 10 minutes with our own thoughts. Start there. The phone rang. Marcus answered it with the same calm voice, the same unhurried presence. Ethan sat there, staring at his own phone, feeling something unfamiliar stir in his chest. Not quite hope. Not yet. But maybe curiosity. The next morning, Ethan woke up at 7:30 a.m. On purpose, with an alarm set 15 minutes earlier than usual. He sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the wall, feeling ridiculous. Okay, 10 minutes. Just sit. Just breathe. Just focus. He lasted 47 seconds before reaching for his phone. Instagram, TikTok, messages, news, anything to fill the unbearable silence. This is stupid. I don't have time for this. I need to... But need to what? Rush to the same job? Eat the same breakfast? Live the same scattered day? He forced himself to put the phone down, tried again, closed his eyes. Immediately, his mind exploded with noise. The bills he hadn't paid, the email he'd forgotten to send, the conversation he'd replayed 17 times, the future he couldn't see, the past he couldn't change. 10 minutes felt like 10 hours, but he stayed. When the alarm finally chimed, he opened his eyes, sweating slightly, feeling like he'd just run a marathon while sitting perfectly still. At work, Marcus noticed him arrive early. "You tried it, didn't you?" Ethan slumped into his chair. "Is it supposed to feel like torture?" Marcus laughed. "At first, yes. Your mind isn't used to being present. It's been running on autopilot for so long that consciousness feels foreign. But keep going. It gets easier." "How long did it take you?" "To feel comfortable? About 2 weeks. To feel the real shift? About 3 months?" 3 months. Ethan almost gave up right there. But something in him, maybe desperation, maybe exhaustion, maybe that tiny spark of curiosity, made him try again the next day. And the next. And the next. By the second week, he could sit for the full 10 minutes without reaching for his phone. The thoughts still came, but they didn't control him as much. By the third week, he added something Marcus had mentioned. 3 questions. He bought a small notebook and, before those 10 minutes, he'd write, "What is really important today? What can I control right now? What can I improve in 10 minutes?" The first day he did this, the answers were small. Pay the electricity bill. I can control my response to difficult customers. I can clean my kitchen counter. Simple. Almost embarrassingly simple. But when he got home that night and actually cleaned the kitchen counter, just that one surface, nothing more, something shifted. It wasn't the clean counter that mattered. It was the feeling of completing one thing, fully, with focus. For the first time in months, maybe years, he'd finished something he'd started. 6 weeks into his 10-minute practice, Ethan noticed something strange. His life wasn't dramatically different. He still worked at the call center, still lived in the same messy apartment, still had the same debts, but he felt different. The chaos was still there. Life hadn't become easier, but now there was a center, a still point, a place he could return to when everything else spun out of control. During lunch one day, Marcus shared more about his own journey. "I was where you are now," he said, stirring his coffee slowly. "Actually, worse. 5 years ago, I was managing a hedge fund in New York, making good money, completely miserable, panic attacks, insomnia, my marriage falling apart." Ethan looked at him, surprised. This calm man had been in crisis? "What happened? I burned out, completely, ended up in the hospital. The doctor told me I either needed to change or I'd have a heart attack before 40. Marcus smiled sadly. "I chose change, left the job, left New York, started over." "And the 10 minutes? That came from a therapist who told me something I'll never forget. You can't rebuild a life while you're still living in chaos. You need to create one small pocket of order first." So you chose 10 minutes. I chose 10 minutes. And in those 10 minutes, I practiced the only thing that matters. Presence. Being fully here, fully now, not scattered across 1,000 worries and regrets. Marcus pulled out his notebook and showed Ethan pages of entries. Months of daily questions, months of small actions, months of tiny, focused improvements. "Look at this," Marcus said, pointing to an entry from a year ago. March 15th. My question was, "What can I improve in 10 minutes?" My answer, "Send one kind message to someone." That's it. One message. He flipped forward. April 3rd. Organize one drawer. May 12th. Read 3 pages. June 8th. Sit in silence and just breathe. Ethan stared at the pages, hundreds of entries, each one small, each one doable, each one done. This is how you rebuilt your life? 10 minutes at a time? This is how anyone rebuilds anything, Marcus said. We think we need grand transformations, but real change happens in tiny increments of focused attention. 10 minutes of presence is more powerful than 10 hours of distraction. That evening, Ethan looked at his own growing collection of entries. 2 months of questions and small actions. 2 months of keeping one small promise to himself every single day. He'd paid off 3 credit cards, not because he suddenly had more money, but because he'd used his 10 minutes to create a payment plan and stuck to it. He'd read 2 books, not because he suddenly had more time, but because he'd used his 10 minutes to read 5 pages daily. He'd fixed the guitar, not because he suddenly became handy, but because he'd used his 10 minutes to replace 1 string at a time. None of it was dramatic. All of it was real. And for the first time since he could remember, Ethan felt like he was moving forward instead of just surviving. 3 months into his practice, the email arrived. Subject: Company Restructuring Update. Ethan's stomach dropped before he even opened it. Budget cuts, department consolidation, 20 positions eliminated. His name was on the list. So was Marcus's. 2 weeks severance, effective immediately. That night, Ethan sat on his couch, staring at the termination letter, feeling the old panic rising, the scattered thoughts, the spiraling fears, the paralysis. This is it. I'm going to lose the apartment. Can't pay the bills. Back to square one. I knew this focus thing was bullshit. I knew nothing would really change. He stopped himself, took a breath, pulled out his notebook. What is really important today? Not panicking. Staying clear. What can I control right now? My response, my next action, my focus. What can I improve in 10 minutes? I can make a plan. He set a timer for 10 minutes. In those 10 minutes, he didn't solve everything, But he did one thing. He made a list. Skills he had, things he enjoyed, options he could explore, people he could reach out to. When the timer chimed, he felt something unexpected. Not peace. The fear was still there, but clarity, momentum, direction. The next morning, he woke up at 6:30 a.m., used his 10 minutes to research online courses in UX design, something he'd always been curious about but never pursued. The next day, he used his 10 minutes to sign up for one. The next day, he used his 10 minutes to complete the first lesson. Day after day, for 6 weeks while living on severance pay and odd jobs, Ethan used his 10 minutes to build something new. Not dramatically, not desperately, focused, present, one small step at a time. Marcus called him during this period. He'd already found a new job, consulting with companies on workplace wellness. "How are you holding up?" Marcus asked. "Honestly, better than I thought I would," Ethan said. "I'm scared, but I'm not scattered. The 10 minutes are keeping me grounded." "Good. Remember, the practice isn't about making life easy. It's about staying present with life exactly as it is. That's the real power." "I'm starting to understand that." "You're going to be okay, Ethan. Not because everything will work out perfectly, but because you know how to focus now. And focus is the only real superpower we have." 4 months after losing his job, Ethan got an interview. A small tech startup looking for a UX designer to improve their customer support platform. The irony wasn't lost on him. The kid who'd spent years mindlessly answering calls might now help design better systems for others doing the same work. The interview went well. The portfolio he'd built in his 10-minute increments impressed them. They offered him the job. $52,000 salary, remote work, creative freedom. It wasn't a fortune, but it was a beginning. On his first day, before logging in to his new computer, Ethan sat at his newly organized desk and took his 10 minutes. He looked around his apartment. It wasn't perfect, but it was clean, organized, intentional. He looked at his notebook. Months of entries, months of small focuses, months of rebuilding in tiny increments. He looked at himself in the mirror and barely recognized the person looking back. Not because he looked different, because he felt different. The scattered, chaotic, overwhelmed version of Ethan was still in there somewhere. But there was something else now. A center, a core, a still point he could always return to. He realized something profound in that moment. The 10 minutes hadn't changed his external circumstances. Those had changed because of actions he'd taken. The 10 minutes had changed something deeper. They'd taught him that he could be present with himself, that he could focus, that he could take one thing and do it fully, completely, without distraction. In a world of endless noise, 10 minutes of focused silence was an act of revolution. In a life of scattered energy, 10 minutes of intentional presence was an act of creation. He thought about Marcus's words from months ago. "We think we need massive change, but most of us can't even sit still for 10 minutes." Ethan had learned to sit still, and from that stillness, everything else had grown. 1 year later, Ethan sat in a quiet coffee shop on a Saturday morning. His work was going well. He'd been promoted to lead designer. His debts were nearly paid off. His apartment was clean, organized, alive with plants and light. But more importantly, he was present. Not perfect, not always calm. Still human, still struggling sometimes, but present. The door opened. Marcus walked in, spotted him, and smiled. They hadn't seen each other in months. Marcus was thriving in his consulting work, helping companies create healthier environments for their employees. They hugged, sat down, caught up on life. "You look good," Marcus said. "Centered, I feel different, Ethan admitted. I thought I needed a new life, but I just needed to show up for the one I had. 10 minutes at a time, Marcus raised his coffee cup to small focuses, the kind that rebuild everything. Ethan raised his own cup. I can't thank you enough. You gave me something I didn't even know I was missing. I didn't give you anything, Marcus said gently. I just showed you a door. You're the one who walked through it every single day. As they talked, Ethan pulled out his notebook, worn now, filled with a year of daily questions and small actions. He opened to a blank page and wrote, "What is really important today? Being here. Fully. What can I control right now? My presence, my focus, my peace. What can I improve in 10 minutes? Nothing. For the first time, nothing needs improving. Just being is enough." He looked up at Marcus and smiled. The quietest practice, Ethan said, created the loudest transformation. Marcus nodded. That's how it always works. The world changes in silence, one focused moment at a time. Outside, the city roared with its usual chaos, sirens, traffic, construction, noise. But inside, two men sat in perfect stillness, present, focused, free, 10 minutes at a time. The power to transform your life doesn't require dramatic change or massive effort. It requires one thing: the discipline to be fully present for just 10 minutes a day. In that focused stillness, everything begins to reorganize. Not because life becomes easier, but because you become more capable of meeting it exactly as it is. Chaos isn't defeated by grand gestures. It's dissolved by tiny, consistent acts of intentional presence. This story reminds us that the most powerful transformations don't come from doing more. They come from being present with what we're already doing. 10 focused minutes can rebuild what years of distraction destroyed. Not because the minutes are magical, but because presence is. What would change in your life if you gave yourself just 10 minutes of complete focus every single day? What's the one thing you could start today? Not tomorrow, today, with just 10 minutes. If this story resonated with you, type "focus" in the comments. Let me know you stayed until the end. Share what city you're watching from. Your presence here might inspire someone else's journey. Subscribe and hit the bell, because every week I share stories that can shift how you see yourself and your struggles. Click the card on screen for another powerful transformation story. And remember, your entire life can change in the time it takes to be fully present for 10 minutes.